Is this truly the case in the United States right now? Or do you think this perception stems from issues with schools and majors? Or perhaps they have found a better way to secure their future? How do you view this issue? Story 1. The definition of success has changed with inflation. Success used to cost 1/3 of what it does today when the college degree system began producing workers. Story 2. Because many people have assumed large amounts of debt to pursue careers that do not immediately offer a high return on investment. Story 3. We were told that to be successful, we needed a degree. Then we were encouraged to take out high-risk loans at 17 years old to pay for that degree, with the promise of jobs that would earn enough money to repay the loans. After working hard to graduate, we were called entitled and given jobs requiring high qualifications but paying minimum wage in a highly competitive market. It turns out our best chances to repay the loans are flipping burgers and making coffee. Welcome to the millennial experience. Story 4. Because college is too expensive to get a degree that does not guarantee a good job, people outside of college learn what limited liability companies and sole proprietorships are. At least in my public school education, we learned nothing about business. In my opinion, it is better to be a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning or electrician apprentice than eventually run your own business. That guarantees a good living more than being an expert on the grapes of wrath. Story 5. Just supply and demand. The market is flooded with degrees. Trades generally pay more because there is a shortage of workers. You have to select a career based on demand to earn a good salary. Story 6. The last few presidential elections focused repeatedly on student loan debt forgiveness. Not general debt forgiveness, but specifically student loan debt forgiveness. There were endless, well-publicized discussions about people with student loan debt who could not afford to live in poverty, let alone pursue an upwardly mobile life. That sends a message to people considering going to school. Story 7. A bachelor's degree is the new high school diploma, and a master's degree is the new bachelor's degree. Most Generation Z males are heading for the trades, and they are making the right choice. Story 8. Because many people obtained a degree without achieving the success that was promised, they now face student debt without success. Story 9. I don't believe Americans believe this. I just think that people are starting to realize that it is not the only path to success. For example, I make well over 6 figures a year and never had a degree. I wanted to go to college, but I did not want to pay the money. Plus, I did not want to take extra classes that had nothing to do with the career I was pursuing. Something else to think about is that artificial intelligence can teach you most things that college can, for a fraction of the cost and time. Some people may need to go to college if they are trying to be a lawyer or a doctor, but if those are not your majors, I do not see how college is the be-all and end-all anymore unless you are using it to network. Story 10. College graduates on average still vastly out-earn people who only completed high school, even those who majored in liberal arts. It is not a guarantee, and of course there are exceptions. However, it can definitely open doors and opportunities. While it may not be for everyone, the idea that it is pointless now because it is not a 100% guarantee is misguided. That said, spending several $100,000s on a fancy private college has less likelihood of paying off. One point that does not get talked about a lot is that state school prices have actually been falling relative to overall inflation over the last 5 years. The real savings come in what the average student actually pays after receiving grants and financial aid. That amount is down 40% over the decade, from $4,140 to $2,480 annually, according to the data. Story 11. Because it is not. You need a diploma and connections or you will not get a good job. There are more college-educated people than good jobs requiring a college education. Story 12. My little brother, age 18, sells pest control services in the summer and made $170,000 in 5 months. He has not graduated high school yet. Story 13. Because it is not that simple. You cannot just get any degree and expect to get a job now. College has become more accessible, and a degree does not hold as much value as it used to. A technical degree can give you an advantage, but most liberal arts majors do not hold much weight. There are other viable and accessible pathways to success thanks to the internet and technology that are affordable. Story 14. Because if you listen to anyone who actually works at a university, they have been saying this from the start. Higher education occupies an odd space in society where it simultaneously portrays itself as career preparation and a place of higher learning. The two do not necessarily intersect. If you ask your high school guidance counselor, they will tell you that you need to go to college to get a good career. If you ask your college professor, they will tell you they are there to teach you about ancient Celtic societies and do not care if you ever get a job. Learning is its own reward. It is not entirely a broken system, but it is also not designed to be what we currently treat it like. Story 15, because it never has been. Someone with talent, skill, intelligence, and a degree has a much higher probability of success. However, success is never guaranteed. The example of people without college degrees being successful does not invalidate the argument for having a degree. Story 16. Because colleges offer many degrees that may not lead directly to a job, they often promote the idea that you go to college to find yourself and discover your passion. In reality, you should enter college with a general career or field in mind and be realistic about balancing your passions with making money and supporting yourself. I went to college and tripled my income with an associate degree. I am not rich, but I make decent money for being single with no children compared to minimum wage. I am still in school because I know higher education in my field opens up more career and licensing opportunities. Story 17. Because it is not true, the student loan groups trap young people into decades of debt. There is also degree inflation. With so many people earning a bachelor's degree because their parents encouraged them and the government provided money, a Bachelor of Science is not as special anymore. But when it is 10 a.m. the day before you are about to have Christmas dinner for the entire family and your fuse box blows, that Bachelor of Science in English literature will not fix the electronics like a journeyman electrician can. Story 18. In the United States, college can be problematic. It benefits some but disadvantages many others, somewhat like a pyramid scheme. Success stories often highlight people making large amounts of passive income or who are very young, often from wealthy families, and they are celebrated and admired. These stories suggest anyone can achieve the same success by spending a significant amount of money and investing years of effort, but most people end up losing whatever little they have and gain little in return. Many feel that college was a mistake when they realize they have taken on 5- or 6-figure debt that can damage their credit or lead to wage garnishment, while working in fields unrelated to their studies or being severely underpaid. Much of the problem stems from systemic issues in the job market, such as unreasonable requirements and inconsistent compensation. Additionally, young people are expected to know exactly what they want to do with their lives while still teenagers under parental supervision and strict rules. It is not that college is inherently bad. Rather, the experiences before, during, and after college often lead to regret. Education itself is valuable. The system in the United States, however, has significant issues. Story 19. Because the internet changed things. You can become an influencer without a degree. Or you can write video essays and become popular because people want to hear what you have to say. The same goes for podcasting. My point is, there is more than one path toward success, and it has become easier now more than ever to choose a different path. Story 20. With a high school diploma, you can get a job making $55,000 per year. With a college degree, you can make $65,000, but you will be paying $15,000 in student loans for the next 40 years. Story 21. Job degrees still hold great value. Engineering, medicine, and law are degrees where having them is a prerequisite for obtaining particular jobs, and those jobs are relatively plentiful. Non-job degrees are now fairly useless, unlike 30 years ago. Story 22. In addition to what others are saying, if someone attends a trade school, such as for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technician, plumber, or electrician, they can earn a good starting wage and likely incur much less debt. Story 23. Because when I was doing the job, I had 2 degrees and was making less than I do now at a job that requires no college education. Story 24. The federal government has been providing financial aid to anyone who wants to attend school. Students are not required to choose a major that is useful in any way. They are not required to study in fields where the United States is lacking workers. They receive large loans for degrees in fields where the median pay is $15 to $20 an hour. Since universities receive funding regardless, They have increased enrollment and become degree mills. They have also significantly inflated their overhead costs by hiring unnecessary staff. Story 25. I do not think that at all. Earning a degree and becoming highly educated are core values for me and my family. The cost is the problem. Story 26. Partly social media and the high cost of the experience affect some people. Living on your own with no income is expensive. You do not have to get an Ivy League education or spend six figures on college. Most of us can live at home while studying or work part-time. Some of us can earn the government issue bill or use work-based compensation. For most people, the idea that a degree results in higher pay than not having one remains true. Story 27. Most people do not research their careers. By research, I mean reading about the average entry-level wages, tools that can improve your competitiveness for jobs, the job market, and other factors. When reality hits, rather than taking accountability, the blame is often shifted to the degree itself. It reminds me of a time when an all-star student from a highly ranked school complained that the jobs offered to her were too low-paying. When I asked, I learned her degree was in marketing. I gently pointed out that the wages offered are average and typical for her degree. Story 28. Aside from the obvious issue of people obtaining degrees with little value and accumulating substantial debt, a less obvious observation is that more women have college degrees than men. As has occurred frequently in the past, once women become the majority in a particular activity, men begin to perceive it as feminine and lose interest. Currently, Generation Z men tend to view blue-collar jobs as the only masculine occupations. Story 29. It's not that degrees are worthless, but that rent-seeking involving assets and power drains most of the value being created. Any four-year degree can still get you a well-paying job. A four-year degree in something useful will get you double or triple what the average family makes as your base salary in your first job. However, that well-paying job only really gives you options about where to live. It does not let you live extravagantly like influencers pretend to, because that kind of money is only available from inherited multi-generational assets or from becoming extremely successful in entrepreneurship. Story 30. Because it is not. A large percentage of college majors do not lead to sufficiently high-paying jobs. It is not worth 4 years of your time and over $100,000 of your money. They have seen what has happened with the millennials in their lives and do not want to repeat it. Story 31. High amount of debt with no guaranteed employment. In fact, many jobs become obsolete by the time you finish the coursework. Story 32. A more accurate statement would be that a degree is not the only path to success. A degree does not guarantee success. It is simply a stepping stone to it. Story 33. Because it is true for a large number of degrees. 20 or 30 years ago, you could take out a relatively small amount of debt at a relatively low rate to get a degree. Even if it did not make a big difference in your career, paying for it was not necessarily crushing. Now the cost of a degree has skyrocketed. The interest rates, terms, and repayment structures are awful. In general, we have turned educating the U.S. public from a vital function into a profit center for educational institutions and the Department of Education by loaning people $200,000 for a liberal arts degree. In addition, as a result of the 2008 financial crisis, employers became very demanding, requiring degrees for unnecessary positions without paying for them, and wages in the U.S. have stagnated due to their overwhelming leverage. It is a difficult situation, but unless you get a science, technology, engineering, or mathematics degree, you are probably at a disadvantage. Story 34. Because it is not responsible for hiring and firing employees. I have found a significantly higher success rate hiring hardworking people from trades for technology-related positions than otherwise. The same applies in management, including project management. Our policy now is to look for those who are already doing the job, or if we need to build a position, hire someone from trades. Story 35. Because they are tied to massive student loan debts and wages have not kept pace with general inflation, let alone the inflation in college tuition. I have a bachelor's and master's degree, and my career pays fairly well. My student loans amount to $1,000 a month, and yes, I can pay it, but it is still a huge drain on resources. Story 36. I cannot speak for United States people, but as an Australian with one advanced diploma, 2 degrees and 7 years of industry experience. I cannot find a job to save my life. Story 37. College education is expensive, considering tuition fees, accommodation, and other daily needs. You start your adult life 4 years later, having consumed your savings or accumulated significant debt. In Europe and many other countries, college education is free or heavily subsidized, so this issue is particularly severe in North America. Many graduates face long periods of unemployment or low-paying jobs due to oversaturated degree programs. With the growing shortage of skilled tradespeople, starting a career as a car mechanic, roofer, electrician, or in a similar trade is becoming a more rational choice for many. Story 38. Because millions of jobs are available to make good money for people who are willing to work. Another important point is a high percentage of people who earn degrees do not use the degree for its intended purpose. From my point of view as a 41-year-old male living in the middle of the country, unless you are getting a degree in engineering or the medical field, you are better off learning through interest and on-the-job training. I am sure there are exceptions to my claim. As a mechanic, I earned a 2-year degree because of the complex systems in vehicles today. I work almost exclusively on electrical and communication networks inside vehicles and would have a hard time imagining doing this without the education. Story 39. It is a scam because they want to give out degrees for every little thing. It is not always necessary. A company can offer training and be done with it for certain jobs that pay at the low end instead of requiring degrees for the same low pay. Story 40. Because a degree is not a reliable path to success. I am 58 and have been retired for 4 years. Did I have a degree? No. I worked hard, managed my finances, and was still able to retire 11 years before I could draw Social Security despite losing half in a divorce to a traditional wife who never earned a paycheck, cheated, and left. Story 41. Most of my colleagues went to a 4-year university and got a degree in some sort of business or accounting. I got a job straight out of high school and worked my way up. We all have the same job and the same wage. My difference is I don't have student loan debt to pay off. On top of that, we are seeing people with master's degrees working entry-level jobs at department stores because there are no actual jobs in their fields. Story 42. As a man with a college degree, it depends entirely on the degree and major. However, even that only goes so far. I studied microbiology first and wanted to take a break before pursuing a master's and a doctorate, only to realize 3 classes from graduation that there are no jobs worth anything. Most pay the same as gas station work, and those that paid moderately better required multiple certifications that each cost several $100s. So I switched to software engineering. Now the information technology field is oversaturated, and medical professionals are in desperate demand. That being said, those are all science, technology, engineering, and mathematics or STEM-adjacent fields. Philosophy, English, and similar majors are unlivable degrees that saddle you with ridiculous debt that you will never pay off. Story 43. Not sure if this is actually a belief or not, but regardless, what I can say for sure is that if you are okay with working outside, then a trade will give you good job stability, often better pay, and the opportunity to start your own business. Also, you will not need loans or financial support from your parents to do it. If you prefer to be inside, a degree is probably the path for you. If you could go either way, I highly recommend the trade route. Story 44. The key word is reliable. Nothing can ever give a 100% guarantee of success, but college loans are large, and the expectation is that college graduate incomes are correspondingly larger, enough to cover the loans. I do not know objective numbers adjusted for age, but every Generation X individual I know who knows a millennial or a Generation Z individual seems unanimous that student loan debt is frighteningly large for younger people compared to what we experienced. Additionally, expected earnings have not increased in pace with the loan increases. Many of them could spend most of their lives under those debts and will have much less to enjoy themselves or pass on to their own children. Story 45. The math doesn't add up anymore. Tuition and books for in-state college are $50,000 if you live at home. Add in rent and food, and you're looking at $110,000, and that's for a basic degree that won't help much in getting a job. Add another $50,000 for a Master of Business Administration or a master's degree to actually make you employable, and you need a 6-figure salary pretty fast after graduating to pay it off. plus make up for the money you could have earned instead of going to school. 2-year programs still look good, but there simply isn't enough money in a 4-year or longer program anymore. Story 46. The right degree is a reliable path to success if you do not graduate with a large amount of student debt. Other paths to success include the military and skilled trades. Many people do not fall into any of these categories for various reasons. The moral of the story is that telling every high school student they must go to college has never been and will never be a correct blanket statement. Story 47. Unless you have a very specific path that you want to take and study, it is all a waste of money. I have 2 Bachelor of Science degrees and a master's degree and work a blue-collar job that pays me way more than what I would ever get with the degrees. Story 48. The last 2 decades have really soured people on the value of college. Stagnating wages, rising cost of living, and lack of job security have undermined the value of a degree. However, people are still sending their children to college and borrowing large amounts of money to pay for it, so it seems that they still believe it is the most viable option. Story 49. I learned almost everything I know from working with people more experienced than me. I went to college for a semester, and it is designed for people who can easily memorize information, so I dropped out. Find someone at work who is smarter than you, likes sharing information, and start asking questions. Story 50. Like many have said, college tuition has increased by as much as 600% compared to 40 years ago. Many jobs have not grown nearly as much, meaning that many degrees do not pay for themselves as a return on investment. However, I will tell everyone here what I always say about a degree. Picture yourself as a recruiter or a hiring manager with a stack of 10 applications that all look pretty good. Maybe you have narrowed them down to 10, or maybe you just received 10 in total. You have time to interview about 5 of them. You do not know any of these people, and for the most part, they all look on paper like they could do the job. 3 out of those 10 do not have college degrees, and the other 7 do. The 3 without degrees are going to be removed from the stack, if for no other reason than it was the only way to narrow it down. That is why you have to have a college degree. It is absolutely fine not to have one, but you will be against the odds all the time. Story 51. If you look at the statistics of the percentage of college graduates who have a job that uses their degree, it is quite low. The statistics on college graduates who have jobs that do not require a degree are even more concerning. A large number of people could have skipped college and ended up in the same place without debt. Story 52. 1. Getting a degree puts you into a lot of debt, and you may not get a well-paying job to pay it off afterward. Most degrees people are advised to have too many applicants, making it difficult to find a job in your field even with a degree. Even if you get a job, most places want a doctor of philosophy and 5 years of experience to pay you barely above minimum wage, while most retail jobs struggle to hire people at $15 or more per hour. Story 53. A degree has never been a reliable path to success. It is one step along a path that may or may not lead to a desired destination. Story 54. I think the expense is part of it. College is expensive, but some people make choices that make it even more costly. Do not go out of state. Do not attend a private school. If you can complete the basics at a community college, you will save money. Do not pursue a degree without knowing how you will build a career from it. It is okay to take longer than 4 years if you need to. Employers do not mind. By the numbers, most people with college degrees have higher lifetime earnings than those without. It is a good idea to get a college degree, and there are still ways to do it without incurring life-crippling debt. If your vision of college is attending a $60,000 per year private school and getting a degree in political science while going to parties, then of course you do not see it as a reliable path to success. It is not. Story 55. Because there are no guaranteed successful paths, a degree still statistically gives you a meaningful advantage over those without one. You play with the odds to minimize risks and maximize your own favor. Story 56. I know it sounds privileged and naive, but your best bet, in my opinion, is to go into higher education when you have an interest in a field that genuinely brings personal fulfillment, rather than entering education with the mindset of needing to survive. I used to have the mentality of looking for a career that would pay me enough to survive. After working in warehouses and staffing agencies, I met many people from different walks of life who really taught me, 1. Putting all your loyalty into someone else is risky. Swear unyielding loyalty to your well-being above all. If what you want to do is self-fulfilling and pure of heart, it is absolutely possible to achieve it. Again, it is very naive to assume everyone can easily make those decisions, but I open my mind to the value in non-science, technology, engineering, and mathematics degrees, fields, and trades. Story 57. I think the professor pipeline also produces many university staff who oppose treating higher education as job training, despite that being most people's goal. In my opinion, many people become teachers, particularly at the college level, because they do not want to work in the traditional business world, which I do not blame them for. Unfortunately, this creates a feedback loop of university staff not wanting to structure college around the needs of businesses, so people are less prepared to enter the workforce. Unless you are studying something specific like accounting or some hard sciences, college largely just shows that you can stick with something for more than 4 years. That is still valuable, but probably not worth the full cost. Story 58. Because we have systematically diluted education in America. Everyone goes to college. Coupled with the gradual defunding and privatization of education over the past 2 decades, a small segment of society has officially negated the importance of education to a free and successful population. Story 59. Most degrees are not terminal. They cost a fortune, and there is no guarantee of employment providing a wage that will allow you to comfortably pay back that cost. Story 60. Yes, similar to what everyone else is saying, everyone knows someone who went to college and could not find a job afterward. Little does this person know that the individual they know went for a useless degree and, rightfully so, could not get a job with it. Story 61. Because like most everything else in the United States, the profit motive and private companies turned the whole system into a debt trap. In almost every other developed country, the tuition fees for a 3 to 4 year bachelor's degree do not leave you with hundreds of thousands in debt. The worst part is that borrowers cannot discharge their student loans by declaring bankruptcy. It is a debt trap with no escape once you are in it. Another completely untrustworthy benefit of unregulated capitalism. Story 62. Well, that is the point of my original answer. The available opportunities do not justify going to school. Story 63. Because you graduate with a certificate and not a job or career, it has to be a skills-based degree that is practical in the real world. Much of the work in school is busy work and filler. Only a few majors are real career starters. Story 64. A hospital in my area has 3 openings for a Master of Biology, and it pays $21 an hour. I am a steelworker and get paid $31 an hour with a high school diploma. Story 65. American college is shockingly expensive, and entry-level positions that do not pay a livable wage require a 4-year degree or more. It has been this way for a while. A friend of mine got a part-time job at Walmart to support herself during college, and 3 years later, she is in mid-level management, making $62,000 base pay and eligible for 33% of that in bonuses at 21 years old. You are not achieving that with any degree. Even if you are a tech prodigy, get your startup funded, and succeed, you likely dropped out of the college you were attending to do so. Story 66. It was never the degree. It was the education that guaranteed success. That education has been diminished by a never-ending quest to simply obtain. Students should be educated in a way that meets the current economic demands of their generation. What worked for one generation will change and evolve for the next. Story 67. College used to be rare, something that very smart people did, and it was a marker of a certain kind of person who made a very valuable employee. We reversed causation, as humans tend to do, and decided that we could make everybody rich if they all went to college. We heavily subsidized college, and many more people attended. However, there were not magically more really smart people created, we just sent relatively less prepared people over time. We also created a much larger group of people with college and advanced degrees. However, the pool of elite, high-status jobs such as tenure-track academic positions and members of Congress did not increase at nearly the same pace as college graduates. Now we have a larger and less prepared group of people competing for a relatively smaller number of jobs that are considered successful. From the perspective of employers, a college degree is no longer a guarantee of a good employee because they are less prepared on average than they used to be. From the perspective of the educated, It is much harder to get a high-status job than it used to be, despite the average competitor being less prepared than before. Everyone is frustrated, and this is not surprising. Story 68. Is this truly the case in the United States right now? Or do you think this perception stems from issues with schools and majors? Or perhaps they have found a better way to secure their future? How do you view this issue? It is not as irrational as you think. Basically, college tuition has climbed about 3 times faster than salaries over the past 20 years, and the amount of time it now takes for an average graduate to pay off their student loans went from about 7 years in the 1990s to around 20 or more years today. Worse, you have things like income-driven repayment, which starts feeling like indentured servitude as it becomes a sort of permanent tax on future income. When you venture into the liberal arts and into non-science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subjects, frankly, the lifetime earning potential for a graduate may not actually pay for the tuition plus interest. Approximately 23% of 4-year degrees do not even pay for themselves. To be honest, if I had children, unless they were very smart, which, given their mother, they probably would be, and were going into a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics-related subject, I would try to steer them away from college and towards a vocational degree of some sort, like nursing or an apprenticeship in construction or the like. Something where there is a demonstrated need and the return on investment on tuition is clearly positive. I do think college is important, but honestly, does it make sense for a young person at 18 to rack up enough debt to buy a home in parts of this country, only to get a degree that lands them something that makes twice minimum wage? Story 69. Because I could learn 99% of the material online for free without having to pay $50,000 for a professor to point at the same content. Story 70. I think a degree that has little chance of leading to a career is not a path to success. If it were, then why are there so many people in the United States with degrees working in retail or the service industry? Research is needed before spending 4 years and a significant amount of money on a degree or on anything else. The following are the top careers in the United States that require a 4-year degree: computer science, engineering, finance, healthcare, business administration, nursing, accounting, marketing, information technology, and human resources. The following are careers in the United States that do not require a 4-year college degree. Story 71. Many people in the United States were extremely irresponsible and believed they could attend any college they wanted, regardless of the cost, and receive a high-paying job immediately after graduation, regardless of their degree or field of study. For example, many teachers could have attended an affordable community college, even for just the first 2 years, spending around $10,000 per semester. Instead, they felt entitled to the real college experience by attending a school halfway across the country that cost $50,000 per semester, fully aware that teacher salaries typically start very low. Rather than recognizing that they made poor life choices, they believe the world owes them free college because they are struggling to pay off their student loans. Story 72. College is generally worth it if you pursue a degree with good job prospects. I earned a degree in mechanical engineering, and it was definitely worth it. I also have a friend who went to school to become a nurse, and they are doing well. I have family members who attended law school and earn a good income, though they have more debt. In the long run, it will be more than worth it. The point is that college is worth it when you choose a degree that you can actually utilize well. Story 73. Many low-quality schools accept nearly anyone, attending a top 50 university according to U.S. News and World Report remains a good investment. Story 74. College costs too much. For example, I have an associate degree. I make 6 figures and attended a vocational college. My wife got her master's degree from the most prestigious university in the state, and it took her longer to make close to what I make. She is even in her field of study. You are no longer special if you have a degree. You are just another worker. However, if you have skills that can only be acquired through experience and training, like me, you are a specialist and an expert in your field. Look at the wages of registered nurses compared to journeyman electricians or plumbers. All the answers are there. Story 75. 99% of degrees printed in the United States have less value than toilet paper. I have a United States degree from a university that ranks in the top 10 globally. I paid nothing for my free education with automatic entry into graduate school in the mathematical sciences. While I retired at 30, the students at so-called elite schools have no merit and no chance. The universities are just exploiting your affluent parents to make money. Story 76. There are many low-quality degrees and many people who fall into the trap of not knowing what to do, spending a lot of money. Getting a reliable degree to open the door to a stable career is still a great path for most people. Story 77. Do not believe everything you read because computer science probably has a 99.9% unemployment rate at this point. Story 78. If you want to blame generational privilege or laziness, go ahead. Not having a good work ethic or whatever reason placates your indignation. But maybe it's the prospect of putting in a potential decade and many thousands of dollars just to be told you need more experience, with no way to even get your foot in the door. Maybe because a trade guarantees you a paycheck with the high potential of improving wages, and you do not live near poverty trying to decipher textbook jargon while eating instant ramen. Maybe it's the absurd politics and entry requirements of colleges demanding you prove yourself worthy to pay them to teach you. Higher education is great, but not for everyone. I have an English degree and $39,000 in debt. And maybe giving a large chunk of your life for maybe is a gamble we're not willing to take anymore. Story 79. Because of unemployment rates after graduation, starting salaries are similar or lower compared to jobs that do not require a 4-year degree. For years of no income, debt that was unnecessary to take on, and employers increasingly stating they do not require college degrees all contribute to this trend. Inflation, cost, benefits, and risk all suggest a college degree is not economically worth it unless you have a specialty or the branding of the school, such as Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, is enough to outweigh the actual usefulness of the major, especially since recruitment and career offices have been nearly useless. Many people are going to trade schools where there is higher demand for their skills after graduation compared to degrees in liberal arts, sociology, or gender studies. They opt for programming, engineering, architecture, or specialist-type degrees, but who is going to pay well for an English major? Basically, it is an increasingly worse return on investment and risk ratio. Story 80. I am inclined to say yes to a fault. I think it matters more to have a degree in a type of field rather than in a specific area. Be as general as possible so you can be hired by more places, but also do whatever you can to get experience that contributes to the degree. Otherwise, you will be trapped in a field of experience not directly related to your degree. Story 81. No longer? I did not believe it 30 years ago. I think if anything, it has changed the other way. A degree is assumed to be more of an entry-level requirement than it ever was. It used to matter, but now it is just a checkbox, and an expensive and time-consuming one. If there is a reverse in the trend, this is probably why. It is an expensive commodity, and a good part of it does not even enhance your skill set. Story 82. It's just the way of the world. The more widespread something is, the less value it has. It used to be that a bachelor's degree was the pinnacle of education. You could get a great job and support a whole family. Then everyone got one, and now it's basically like a high school diploma. There are very few well-paying jobs available with just a bachelor's degree. Trying to get a career in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics? A Bachelor of Science degree is basically useless. I have met lab assistants with higher qualifications than a Bachelor of Science degree. When you combine this devaluation of the degree with the ballooning costs and massive debt needed to obtain one, it is unsurprising that people are rejecting it. Story 83. I feel like artificial intelligence is devaluing a lot of jobs nowadays, especially when you are using a computer. Correct me if I am wrong, but it seems hands-on work and fixing things are safer from artificial intelligence. Story 84. I am a 54-year-old male working as an engineer without a degree. I recently changed jobs and was hired. I found that in interviews with technical professionals, pretending until you succeed does not work. You either know the material or you do not, and that is what gets you hired. This may not apply to all types of work, but for my particular specialty, certifications are much more important. Story 85. Many people earn degrees but do not get hired for positions that pay the bills. Not only are they burdened by debt, but they also cannot afford the regular cost of living. Story 86. To truly answer this complex question, I need much more than a Reddit comment. You could easily write a book on this topic. To give a short answer, propaganda comes from both pro-college and anti-college people. Story 87. College is still a reliable path to success for some students, seeking certain careers with specific combinations of majors and schools. However, college is not the only path to success. In healthcare, nursing still pays well and offers future opportunities, such as advanced registered nurse practitioner. But the program of study is challenging, and the work itself is demanding. In vocational fields, plumbing is hard and messy work. However, it pays well and is in demand. A Bachelor of Arts in English Literature or a computer science degree from a below-average program can be extremely challenging. Story 88. The cost of a degree compared to the pay of a job that requires one is decreasing. Meanwhile, certifications for certain jobs do not require a degree, pay well, and provide greater job security. I went to school and earned an associate's degree in fire science. However, the main investment was my Fire Inspector 1 certification. Obtaining the degree was secondary and required 2 additional classes, so I decided to complete them. This was done at a junior college for $4,000. I now make $120,000. Story 89. I do not know which way is better or worse, but personal experience tells me it is not a deciding factor in one's success. At 39 years old, I know more successful people in my immediate sphere of influence who barely graduated high school than people who went to college and then became successful. Story 90. Imagine earning a 3-year YouTube degree without actually starting a YouTube channel. You simply listen to 3 years of theory on how to start a YouTube channel. Story 91. Because we make people like the Cash Me Outside girl richer than most people with a master's degree, it is still a reliable path to success if you research what fields are in demand and get a job in one. Story 92. Americans do not. Ask those people you see on television saying where their child goes to college. They will tell you. Story 93. After 2008, degrees ceased to guarantee employment. The benefits ceased to be worth the effort outside of in-demand fields. Story 94. There is not much return on investment. Degrees are an oversaturated market themselves. However, I can say it is probably much better for your health. Story 95. The return on investment is not there for many of the most common degrees. The truth is that if you are able to go to school with mostly scholarships or attend a more affordable public university, it is still one of the more effective ways to get into a good career. Trade school is probably a bit better now since trades make good money, but it still works best if you acquire as little debt as possible for a higher return industry such as engineering. Story 96. It is just too expensive for the experience you can gain in the meantime. College should only be recommended for lawyers, doctors, and very specialized areas. Even engineering and business, I would argue, could be taught through actual positions rather than solely through college or trade school. Story 97. I suppose that Americans today believe that a degree is no longer a reliable path to success due to how they define success. If artists and creative types desire personal satisfaction, then majoring in fine arts, acting, cello, and similar fields is a way to success. If they think that lucrative paychecks necessarily come with such degrees, then they are likely setting themselves up for disappointment. Story 98. I completed 1 year of college and then decided to leave. Last year, I earned $130,000 in my 3rd year as a commercial heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technician. I bought a house, 2 new cars, and a boat, and I also saved a significant amount of money. It seems that most of my friends who stayed in college earned a degree but accumulated a lot of debt, and now work as servers. I am not against college. It just did not help me or most of my friends. Story 99. Because people with university degrees do not always earn enough to repay the student loans used to obtain those degrees. Story 100. I make 6 figures in the oil fields right now. I hated the idea of college and still do because of how expensive it is. 4 years is a long time for a piece of paper that promises nothing and puts you into a lot of debt. I am about to leave my job in the oil fields before I destroy my body too much. I am sick of the hard work and weather slowly wearing me down. My next path still is not college. I doubt I will ever go to college. I think colleges are run less like places of education and more like businesses these days, similar to hospitals, and they both leave a very bad taste in my mouth. Story 101. Too many joke degrees and unnecessary classes are required to obtain one. It is a money grab. Many jobs do not require a degree. Story 102. STEM degrees have a high rate of financial reward, but not all degrees do. I have lost track of how many times I have seen someone say they had a medical degree, but it is in health sciences and they cannot get a job based solely on that degree. I advise you to do your homework before you start school. Do not get halfway down the path before deciding if you are aiming for the summit or the base. You need to come prepared for one or the other. Story 103. It took me 3 weeks to get my commercial driver's license plus 6 weeks of training, and I was making over $1,500 a week as a brand new truck driver. I currently make over $30 per hour as a federal technician, and the only requirement was to be in the Army National Guard in my state. I had a few information technology jobs call me because I have my Security Plus certification and secret clearance. It only took a few weeks of studying to pass that test. Some jobs require you to go to school for 2 to 12 years with no guarantee. Story 104. Employers pay well for a set of skills or knowledge that is unique. Degrees are not unique. Story 105. It used to be that you could graduate and go straight into a job during the boomer era, but now you need 10 years of experience for an entry-level position. I was able to work part-time at the hospital where I later worked full-time while still in my associate degree program. Even after I graduated, many people in my department had been in the field for years, often following the surgical route with on-the-job training that led to certification instead of requiring a degree. Working part-time and 4 to 5 days per pay period, I earned more than both of my parents combined when they were full-time teachers. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.